Well, I'm so excited because I get to sit down with a dear friend today, Selena. Welcome to the Brave Table of.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So we're gonna there's a lot that I want to get into with you today, and I feel like for the audience, I think it was a couple years ago that you wrote this incredible, really deep article around a relationship that you had just been through. And I feel like people don't necessarily know that as part of your story because they see you as, publicity queen, public relations.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we get this glimpse into kind of this backstory that you were kind of going through. And I mean, it's your article. I was in an emotionally abusive relationship, even as a smart and successful woman. So I kind of want to start there and open up as to take us through that time in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2017, things were looking amazing in my business. I was celebrating my 5-year business anniversary with friends. I remember, being at the rooftop of the Standard Hotel being like, life is great. Everything's amazing. I had, a 7-figure business, successful launches, happy students, amazing friends. And it was around that time that I met someone who I thought was going to be my Prince Charming. And, it's interesting because this person had actually had his eye on me at least a year before he met me. And I later learned from a friend that he had said to someone, one day I'm going to date Selena Soo.
Wow.
Yeah. He was just like, had that vision. And we ended up meeting, and I didn't really think that he was my type necessarily, but he latched on to me, and he was always trying to think of ways to help me. And, I thought I'll just invite him to the party. And he ended up
no big deal. He's just going to come.
Yeah, he's just one of many people. It seems like he's a believer in my work, a huge supporter. So sure, I'll invite him to the party. And he bought me a $250 gift card to one of the best restaurants in New York City.
Just the first time he was meeting you?
Yeah, well, it was the second time because we met at a workshop, and then I was like, he just kept on following up with me, and he seemed to be a huge fan and wanted to connect me to all these people. And I was like, I'll just invite him to the party. He seems like a nice person to have in my world.
Sure.
And he gave me this gift card.
And you're a really good networker. So I want to set the stage for people to know because you bring so many people together, and people know you because you have so many different online events and even in-person events in New York at the time when you were there.
Yeah.
Because I remember Ajin and I going to one.
Right.
And so, I mean, that's just who you are.
Right, that's who I am. So if I find someone who I think is like generous and adds value to other people and believes in my work, then why not, bring them into my world? Like I'm, open in that particular way. And so I invited him to the party, and then he gave me this gift card, and I was like, wow, because, food's my love language. I'm a foodie, and it was just like a very nice thing to do. And it was a big gesture, so it sort of got my attention. And, and then I was like, oh, love to get to know you better. And I was thinking just like purely platonic, just like how I know, many hundreds of incredible entrepreneurs and coaches. But then it turned into, I could tell that he felt like it was a date, and it wasn't like that in my mind. But he just consistently followed up with me and pursued me. And I just, over time, I started to open up to him. And I remember just sharing something really stressful in my business, and I started crying. And he was such a good listener and just made me feel so seen and understood that I just started to open up my heart. And we got into this relationship, and, early on, like, huge gestures, like taking me to these super fancy, like, $300 per person, like restaurant in New York City. He'd asked me, what are your favorite flowers? And I told him, and when I arrived to the restaurant, there was a bouquet this big of all of my favorite flowers. And we were at like the most amazing restaurant, eating the best food. And he would plan all of these things. And at the time, I think I was naive. I didn't know about the term love bombing, which, when someone comes on this strong and this extreme, doing whatever they can to like win you and blow you away, it's actually a huge red flag.
Wait, so that's actually a term called love bombing?
Yes, you don't know about it?
No,
okay, it's huge. When I learned about that term, that's when people do these like grand dramatic gestures to win your affection. But then there's like insecurity under that, because why do you need to do that?
Right. My gosh, yeah, I can think back. Many of the men who were like narcissistic tendencies that I dated early on. One of them actually wrote about me an article for the paper. And it was literally in the paper. Just how great I am. Yeah. And it was in the paper, and I remember showing it to my aunt and uncle because I was so proud of it. But it was like this guy that did it.
Yes.
And yeah, and then another time, same thing with like the flowers bit. It was like grandiose flowers, like, I don't know, must have been $1,000 or something, but just like,
oh my
huge, big floral displays. That's what love bombing is?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Okay, continue.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Right. So that's what happened. And, his life just became like about me. There was just so much like focus and caring on me, and it felt, really good. And then as I continued to open up and share what was happening in my business, like, he's a very smart, person. And yeah, so I ended up like letting him inside my business because he's like, oh, let me help with this thing. And I just thought like, oh, as my boyfriend, like casually and this and that. But then over time, he became a more integrated part of what I was doing. And things turned when he just became very controlling, and he, would question my friends, saying that, they're using you, or you can't trust them, they're competitors. And, as he would work with my team, he would say, these people don't really have your back, they're taking advantage of you. And he would plant like all these negative seeds in my mind. And, essentially he was looking to manipulate me and isolate me from all the people that cared about me and who I trusted. But yeah, I ended up being in this like very confused and vulnerable position. And I started, letting go of some of the people in my business, and he kind of made himself that indispensable person. But in the process was just extremely controlling of the money I was bringing inside the business, and also like very focused on like how I could keep making more money. I remember when we went to Greece for my birthday, I was so excited to, take a break. And also we had been having like some troubles in our relationship. So I thought, that's going to make everything better.
Sure.
And, I remember being on the plane and just like relaxing and reading the novel Crazy Rich Asians.
Of course.
And him saying, why aren't you reading the real estate finance book I gave you? And I said, I'm not interested in real estate. And he would say, you're being stubborn. You have a bad attitude. So like I was constantly like in trouble for even just like the littlest things, or being told that I was, had a bad attitude. And I remember on my birthday, we stayed at this really beautiful like white villa with like, pink bougainvillea outside.
Oh, wow.
And I just like beautiful scene like in Greece. And I remember waking up, and the first thing he asked me is like, what's the status of this webinar funnel?
And you guys are like on vacation.
And it's my birthday. But he was always thinking about how to like, push me harder to make more money. And the interesting thing is when he said that, I didn't even have the energy to argue with him. I just opened up my laptop and I started just working and getting some things done. And I think like...
And this is on your birthday.
This is on my birthday.
You guys are in Greece.
Exactly.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. So, and I want to pause you right there, because I think that, when we as professional women, successful women, and we are looking for love.
Yeah.
And our first baby is our business many times. And I know that was the case for you. As was for me, it was the one thing that I trusted, because I had lost my, parents. I had a lot of this like trauma. So that was the one thing that I could really focus in on, that was going to give me my pride and joy. And for you, you let him into your world.
Yeah.
And for those who are hearing this right now thinking, wow, am I in a relationship right now where I'm being, this person that's made to feel like I'm wrong all the time, or that I'm maybe going through this emotional abuse? Because did you ever stand up to him in those times?
I did. So all the time I was standing up and speaking up for myself, but then he would say something else to like shoot me down, or we would get into an argument, or then he would apologize and I would think it was resolved, and then, it would happen again. But I definitely like see, my part, because obviously there's two people in a relationship, and that I was, I think, so hungry for love. And once I got a taste of something that just seemed so amazing, I really focused on those positive aspects, and I really minimized and overlooked the negative. And I would constantly be making excuses for him, like, oh, well, he's, been so supportive of me. He's working so hard. Like, I can be the bigger person and suck it up. And I also think that with him, like, pushing me to work so hard in my business, it's only possible because I had that relationship with my work where I also on some level felt like it was never enough. And I always needed to be, building and growing and doing more. And so, if I wasn't in that place, like, that kind of pressure wouldn't even resonate with me.
And maybe this is like to unpack kind of like how you grew up. Take us through how has that been kind of like a core wound for you, or this trigger to constantly work because it's not good enough?
Yeah. So, I mean, I, grew up in Hong Kong. My dad was one of the first Chinese people to ever get admitted to Oxford University. It was like in the newspaper.
No way.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I came from a family of, high achievers. And at one point, my dad was even the vice chairman of the Hong Kong Stock Exchange.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah,
So we are talking crazy rich Asians level.
Yeah. I mean, more the people that I knew versus my family, but I was surrounded by billionaires. Like, that was normal to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And how did that kind of really play into a role of you and kind of the relationship with your parents and your family?
Yeah, I think that there was a big focus on the external, getting into an Ivy League college. I got, at my high school, I was the only person that got into an Ivy League. I went to Columbia. I got really good grades. I don't remember my dad like necessarily constantly pressuring me, but when I was getting those good grades and, having all those external achievements, like, he really liked it. And just all around me, people were focused on, wealth and image and success. And I think just being around that, like, it kind of sent a message to me. But then at the same time, when I was in college, like, I was focused on social justice issues, and I was interning at nonprofits. I was studying, women's studies and all of that. So, but I think even still, with like my interest in like helping others, there was a part of me that always felt like I had to be achieving. I still took that with me.
Of course. And how did it play a role then in the relationships you take on?
I think that, I had been so focused on work. So like, my main relationship was my relationship with my work. And so when that is the dominant relationship in your life, and I didn't have the perspective that I did now, I think that I was also shutting out like other kinds of relationships with work as my number one priority, and just valuing my own success and self-actualization, but in a way that wasn't like fully grounded. And I think that I didn't really have the emotional maturity that I have today to discern, people who aren't healthy for me, and just growing up and being exposed to a lot of unhealthy relationships. I mean, including like friends and, their parents, and those kind of dynamics. I think the standard of what I saw in terms of a healthy relationship was like very low. Yeah, just all around me.
So give us some examples.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the students at my school, they were, some of them were from like billionaire families, and it was all about like, you would know that like, their mom and dad didn't get along. The dad had mistresses in, China and all of that. And the mom was, doing drugs to calm herself down, and retail therapy.
The very high echelon of society, basically.
Yeah.
And kind of the breakdowns in their relationships. Wow.
Yeah, and just like women not necessarily being treated that well, or just like putting up with things that were not ideal. And so, yeah, it's just kind of what I saw, all around me. And also growing up in Asian culture, there is the whole thing about saving face and just kind of like sucking things up and, minimizing things and dealing with things.
Oh my gosh, yes.
You know it.
Oh yes. We can have a whole episode just talking about that. I remember that even when I was going through my divorce on my mom's side, like, and there were problems even, you know, before I was heading into divorce, but my mom's side, they all grew up as, you know, very much this, they were all pageant queens. And so
Oh, wow.
beauty was everything. So my great-grandmother, my grandmother, my grandmother's sister, my mamachi was my grandmother's sister, and my mom and my cousins, they were all, you know, pageant queens from very young. My great-grandmother used to compete even in the 70s in Chicago because that was just like kind of like a thing. So beauty was everything. And, you know, you don't share what's going on behind closed doors.
Right.
Even if, you know, your husband is suspected of perhaps being with other people, that's just not, you suck it up. You don't talk about it. You don't, you know, you don't show face.
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, it was a detriment to kind of how my mom, you know, had breast cancer. But I remember viscerally having this conversation with my aunt, my mom's aunt, my grandmother's sister, that, you know, we're having trouble. And I don't know if I can, because I always confided in her over my Indian aunts.
Yes.
Because they were just a little bit more open. But as soon as she was like, no, we don't do divorce. You know, in the Philippines, that's not even a thing. And they wouldn't even tell us when my cousins in the Philippines would get divorced.
Wow.
Or if there was some sort of infidelity or something like that. It was just not to be talked about because you were supposed to be this like very prim, proper, and beautiful doll that just sat there.
Wow.
Not voicing her opinion.
It's amazing how many similarities we have because my mom, who's from New Zealand, was actually a beauty queen herself.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
okay.
so her and my dad met, and she was competing actually in the Philippines in Miss Asia and the Pacific Islands.
No way.
Yeah, and my mom ended up getting breast cancer too. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, they do say that it's because of like the conflict of their husbands. So yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the energetic.
The mind-body connection.
The energetic.
Stress, pain.
Stress.
Yeah.
Wow. And so I want to kind of bring up, because you wrote this beautiful article that I think it's really a tribute to any smart, successful woman who is, or who probably is in an abusive relationship. You spoke about something where you said, because you were doing all of this self-actualization, you were doing all of this internal work, you just made it to take personal responsibility so much, and even for him.
Yeah, I think that's really important to discuss as smart and successful women, that we, and you know, especially if we have a business and we're essentially a CEO, we take responsibility for everything, including what other people have done. And I think that most people don't take enough personal responsibility, but sometimes we feel like we're responsible for every single thing.
Every single
and we
detail.
need to fix everything.
Yeah, can we talk about that and unpack that? Why is that a thing for people in this way? Because then it's like we miss the signs that there's red flags, because we're like, oh no, I played a really big role in this. Because in personal growth, it's like, well, no, personal responsibility. What role did you play? And it's like, well, yeah, I played the role of picking that person. And also, we have to not think it's our responsibility to fix people.
I mean, it's a trauma response, you know, and I think that as high achieving women, we want to feel a sense of control. And so if we take personal responsibility for everything, there's always something that we can be doing. And then being in action and emotion makes us feel better. But sometimes when things are still and quiet, we can't deal with all the emotions that come up.
Oh, wow. I love that. I love that so much. And so when did you know, because I know you write about this at length, when did you know or feel, or what was that like, that breaking point that you felt that this needed to end?
Yeah, so there were two breaking points for me. The first was I was confiding with a girlfriend about just something that I was looking to build in my business, like an idea for an offering. And my ex was, my boyfriend at the time, he was so controlling and he didn't want me talking to other people about my business. And yeah, he ended up like verbally attacking me and sending me all of these like nasty text messages. And you know, and at one point even like he had these ideas to put in place a board of directors. And I didn't know why I needed a board of directors for a simple personal brand-based business. But he even said at one point, you know, like, the board would have fired you at this point for doing this, or you should get fined like $25,000 for every breach of you like running your mouth and creating problems. And it was just so dramatic. And all I was doing was running an idea by a friend, but he was so all about like controlling me. And it was so extreme. And I remember in my body feeling like I was in a state of danger. Like, even though he never hit me, I was just so afraid about what he was going to do. And he would mention things about lawyers and this and that. And I'm like, why are we talking? Like, this is like, you're my boyfriend. And yeah, that was when I ended the relationship and I left and I went to, you know, LA for a couple weeks. And then when I came back, the crazy thing is, I was still in touch with him a little bit, and eventually I gave him another chance. You know, he was like, this isn't like the real me. Like, I'm so sorry. You know, I'm working on myself. I'm working with a therapist right now. We can go back to the way things were before.
So he gave you promise that this next time or this next version of him was going to be better because he was taking responsibility and working on himself.
Exactly. And, you know, I thought, like, I'm the kind of person in business and life that I want to give people and things a chance. And I want to always feel like I did everything in my power to make something work, which is not always the best strategy. But I kind of have that persistence and like never ever give up, which is a characteristic of a lot of entrepreneurs. And so I gave it another chance. And I was also like just craving something different. I wanted to like leave New York and have a slower pace of life. And I ended up moving to Florida with him, which is crazy.
Goodness. Wow.
Wow. And then ended up isolating myself like even further from my friend network. But within the first week of like being in Florida, I like knew that I had made a mistake, and we had just signed a lease and everything.
Wow.
And but I was like, you know what, let me like give it a real chance. Let me give it a couple more weeks. But yeah, pretty shortly after my time there, like I realized like I had to end the relationship. And I remember the turning point. So I remember, you know, one day waking up, feeling amazing, going to the spa, one of my favorite things to do.
Of course.
And then going to my PO box, and I had this letter from the government, and I like opened it up, and it was my green card.
Amazing.
And I'd been waiting, I think it was 22 years at that point to get my green card.
That's insane. Wow.
And there's a lot of fear, you know, when you are here on a visa and at any point, like something could happen, it could not get renewed, the laws could change, especially with, you know, everything that's happening politically. And it's like, the US is my home, and it's the scariest thing.
And you built your business here and everything.
Yeah, to be like, you might just have to like leave and be somewhere else.
Of course.
And so getting my green card was just one of the happiest moments of my life. And I was so excited, and you know, I was so excited to go home. And then I checked my phone, and he said like, Selena, we need to talk. And I didn't know what we needed to talk about, but I knew that I was in trouble again.
Right.
And I was always, you know, walking on eggshells with him. And I remember like, you know, coming into the apartment being like, I got my green card, and just being so happy. And, you know, I knew that he wanted to say something to me that was not going to make me feel good, but I had to rush and do an interview. And so I was like, let's talk later. And then I go to the computer, you know, for the interview. And then there's like a message from him saying like, you lied to me, you're a backstabber, you betrayed me, and all these like things about me. And I had like tears welling up in my eyes, but I had to just kind of like take a deep breath and suck it up, because I had to be like on camera and just like flash a smile and talk about, you know, publicity and how I had built this like successful business and all of that. But, you know, on the outside, everything looked great, but on the inside, I was like falling apart. And after that, I just felt so scared. I had to leave the apartment. I was calling a friend, and he was following me up to the rooftop and just like so controlling. And my body was shaking, and I just really felt like I was in extreme danger. And, you know, a switch finally flipped where I was like, I'm done. And I had known before, like I had needed to leave, but I was like trying to figure out when was the right time. You know, as a busy entrepreneur, I had like 101 meetings on my calendar. There was barely a break. Like, how do I figure all the logistics of moving? But I was, again, prioritizing my business, and then just like a flip switched, and I was like, I can't feel this way. Like, I'm done. And I went downstairs and I just like stuffed as much as I could into 2 suitcases. And I think there was a part of me that had thought like it's going to be so hard to leave. But I think once I had the conviction, it was easy. You just put what you have in the suitcase and you just get the hell out of there. And, you know, I checked myself into a hotel, and it was crazy to have like a successful multi-7-figure business and to be making an impact in so many people's lives. And my personal life was falling apart, and I didn't even know where I was going to be like living in the short term.
Wow. I mean, I feel like I have chills all over my body as you shared that, because I think that, you know, first I want to just commend you, because obviously I know that we had prepared for this conversation because this is a big deal.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, for, you know, a lot of people in our industry, we didn't really know. I mean, obviously we were friends.
Yeah.
But like, and I knew a lot of the, you know, behind the scenes, but a lot of people just didn't really know that you were going through that in the prime of you doing all these launches, going on interviews and really having these events and going on events and being super public facing.
Yeah.
Yet, and like you said, everything is like glitz and glamour and shiny on the outside, but on the inside you're breaking.
Yeah.
And I mean, what a powerful testimony for you to start trusting yourself.
Yeah.
To be able to get out of that, you know, bubble and this like dark cloud of control. And I mean, it also reminded me of like, yeah, the time, it was like December 31st of like leaving my tumultuous relationship. Yours was not physical. Mine was physical and emotional.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And just, you know, you really are in this mode of thinking, well, I think I could fix. And I was like in this martyr syndrome of like, I think I could fix, until you somehow have the strength within your soul to be like, I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to do this anymore. I don't deserve that. And that's what I'm hearing for you. I mean, obviously it took a friend of mine and my brother to be like, you are leaving. We are not, we're packing your stuff right now. We're leaving my home. And you know, this is the first time I was going to share this with people. And for you, you know, did you ever share this with others, or did anybody in your friend circle or team know or question like, what is happening with you two?
Yes. So this person was on my team, and, you know, he was being disrespectful to me in public and also to other team members. So people didn't like him, and it became very uncomfortable because they also knew that, you know, he was my boyfriend and involved in the business. So it created like a very uncomfortable environment. But when I left, they absolutely did know, because I was like relocating, and we're like on video calls and just having to plan out my next steps. So yeah, they did know.
And how was that to share that super vulnerable piece with everybody?
I think it felt good to share it with my team. You know, I felt like my team always had my back. You know, I did share with someone who was kind of like a friend acquaintance at one point, about what I was going through in the early stages. And I know that, you know, she was intending to come from this loving place, but the way that I received it, it felt a bit judgmental, you know, like, because I was in the process of leaving this person for good. But there were some things I just still needed to sort out. And she did say something to me, you know, along the lines of, you know, me and my partner, we only spend time and, you know, are friends with people who are evolved. And I definitely felt judged in that moment as I was going through my process and trying to untangle the situation. And it did scare me and make me feel ashamed, because when you're in these abusive situations and someone is mistreating you, you know this is not good. You know that it's not what you deserve. But there's all these reasons, you know, why you stay or make allowances or whatever it is. And, you know, we have to go through our own journey of getting out of something that's not good versus feeling the pressure or someone forcing us or saying, oh, if you're not going to do what I say, then you're not evolved enough or
You're not
good
a
enough
friend
to be my friend. So that was really hurtful. But you know, it is what it is. So that was hard. But for the most part, when I did tell friends, eventually, and you know, it wasn't a lot of people, they were really supportive. And the most helpful thing was from a girlfriend of mine named Lindsay. And she was like, you know what you need to do. And at this point, all you can do is just, you know, pray and wait for you to have the strength to leave. You know, because one day, like you will, like the, you know, flip will switch and you'll be like, yes, like I'm done. And that has to be internal versus someone bullying or pushing you to do something you're not ready for.
Yeah, and I mean, and I think it's just like human nature, you know, internally we all want the best for ourselves and for the closest people. Yet when we are in those deep, dark moments, you know, you probably have a friend who is either maybe, you know, doing something that you're like, wow, they're bleeding, or they're, you know, bleeding as a metaphor, but like they're bleeding, they really need support and help. But like you can't necessarily go out and fix that for them. What you can do, and the best thing to do, and we'll obviously talk about advice in just a moment, but like you can just be there to listen and hold space. And what I mean by holding space, it's just being present in your ability to be and feel uncomfortable while they are sharing how much they love this person, how much they love whatever they're doing, their vices, whether it's addictions or workaholic or alcoholic or, you know, cocaine or whatever the thing that you're like, no, don't do that. Why are you doing that? But from afar, all we can do is watch and support. Because I remember there was you know, the visceral moment when it started to click in my head. My girlfriend, Jagu, I'll never forget her. She's like incredible, amazing human being for me, especially during that time. We were at this like very fancy, you know, restaurant turned nightclub at night. And it was going through like me getting confidence, and I was going out again and seeing my girlfriends. And she was like, you know, you're almost going to be 30. You don't have to go through what you're going through. Like, she didn't even say, she didn't acknowledge that I was going through all this. She could just see and witness. And we were just in the bathroom and I'm washing my hands. And she's like, you know, you don't have to be like some of those women who are in their 50s and just like hating their life. You're not even 30, Neetha. You can make a different decision. And she didn't specifically say relationship, but I knew exactly what she was talking about.
Right.
And we know. So you guys, whoever's listening, like, we know that you have the best intentions, but for her to position it that way planted such a deep seed and really was the catalyst for me to be like, right, I don't deserve to be treated this way, you know. But like you said, we have to come at it with our own kind of knowledge and wisdom to make that.
Right. So you were being reminded of your own power versus reprimanded.
Versus reprimanding, which I know, like you, like I had a lot of people who stopped being my friend because they hated the way this man treated me, and they hated who he was. Because just like, you know, I mean, they have these specific tendencies, which we will go into, yet they were like, no, I can't believe she's with him. How could she be with him? And so they judged the situation instead of, and years later, of course, we've repaired, and they're like, I had no idea you were going through that. And I had no idea, and how sorry I am for just stop being your friend because I hated this person so much that he was in your life. So I wonder how many of those friends really came around later on after you like wrote this beautiful article so that people really like got and saw the truth.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't tell many friends, so there weren't that many that had like ended a friendship with me. I was actually the one who was isolating myself because I was embarrassed and ashamed. So yeah, there were, you know, one or two people that were judgmental, but the good thing is those weren't actually my close friends anyways.
And what advice do you have now for someone listening to this that is like questioning if they are in an abusive relationship?
Yeah. I mean, I think on some level, we all know it's just like we're not willing to confront it. I think the most important thing is, and it's actually what our friend Vasavi says, like say it out loud.
So good.
So
good.
Right?
Shout
It's
out
so
to you,
good.
Vas.
Shout out to Vasavi. But yeah, when we're in these abusive situations, like we take it in, we say that we can suck it up, we're understanding where the other person is coming from, we're making allowances from them, and we're just internalizing everything. We're internalizing our pain. And I think when we are in pain, we should just talk about it, with a friend, with a therapist, with someone who will listen and just give our pain voice and validate that pain is there. I think the first step is self-awareness, and as smart, successful women, we can, kind of put on like our CEO hat and be like, I'm going to fix everything. I'm going to take care of everything. I can be the bigger person and let me get back to work and do all of these things.
Because we don't have time for all of that.
Yeah, we also don't have time for it. And we're not really like sitting with the depth of our pain. And so I think the first step is just acknowledging how painful it feels to be disrespected.
Oof. Acknowledge how painful it feels to be disrespected. I feel like that is so huge. And you obviously wrote a ton of reflections in this article, and we'll put this article in the show notes. Because I mean, one of the key things here, it's like when you're emotionally attached to someone, it's easy to make excuses for them. And I love this. I love that you wrote this, because you would always say like, I'll deal with this later. It's too complicated right now. Or he's just being dramatic. He doesn't mean everything he's saying.
Yeah.
I'm more mature. I'm the bigger person. I can take this. And I feel like I'm like, yes, there's so much resonance here. And for those of you listening who's ever been in an emotionally abusive relationship, I mean, these are all things to pay attention to, but I feel like, there's just this, and I want to get to the bottom of your article, because I think, and we'll leave this in the show notes for all of you guys to kind of go back and to read. And, I love that you say that your abuser, as this very wise and powerful woman, could be your lover, friend, or family member. It could be your colleague, boss, or mentor, and they might have helped or supported us in some way, leaving us feel indebted to them. And the indebtedness is like the power we're giving away.
Yes. Yeah, it's not black or white, I mean, obviously some things are black and white. Like if someone hits you, it's very clear, like they are physically abusing you. But with these abusive people, at some point, they were also very kind to you. At some point, they did things to get into your inner circle. At some point, they supported you. At some point, they believed in you, right? And so, but I think that, that's why it's complicated. And people who abuse us, they may actually love us. It could be a family member that really loves us and wants the best for us, but yet they can't control their emotions and they abuse us. So just understanding that it's multifaceted, and it doesn't make the abuse okay, but understanding that there is complexity in these situations.
What is your healing process looking like now, and where are you at with everything?
Yeah, so my healing process has been working with coaches and healers and dissecting the situations and looking at, how could I have shown up differently, and really recognize my power, in some of those situations where I felt powerless. It's also making different choices in my life, because even though that was a specific situation with a specific person, there are other places in my life where, I've been people pleasing, or that I'm not fully in touch with my emotions, and I'm prioritizing someone else instead of myself, or maybe being focused on, how things look on the outside versus really tuning in to moment by moment, how am I feeling? Or maybe things were great at one moment, but today, how do I feel about it? And being able to make a different choice and, healthier choices that honor myself. So yeah, I'm in a much better place, and I feel like, life keeps giving you tests. And so maybe, that abuser is gone, but then someone comes in the form of, it could be an abusive customer or client, or I don't know, just like another kind of abusive energy. And I've had a lot of opportunities to extricate myself from those situations successfully. So I'm feeling good about that.
Amazing. I love that, because yes, the universe will give us these same tests unless we learn what we're meant to learn about that whole kind of pattern.
Yeah.
And to put that away. So the real question is, are you ready for love?
I am so ready for love. Yes, I can't wait.
Amazing. Amazing. So as we get into our final few questions in our igniting round, and I just want to just commend you again, because it's not easy to have the courage to, be brave in sharing some of these aspects of ourselves, because you are, as a public relations specialist,
Yeah.
you're so used to putting, the highlight reels out. So how has that been for you to...
Yes, such a good question. I really feel that me sharing my story and overcoming the situation I was in is really one of the most rewarding things in my personal life and my business life. I did, when I decided to share my story, I did have moments where I was like, are people going to want to hear my story? Is it going to be too much for them? How am I going to be perceived? And how is this connected to my work? But I think it's very connected to my work. I mean, the whole reason why I started my business is because I wanted to elevate other people that had important stories and messages that could really change people's life. And, our stories can change people's lives and sometimes even save people's lives. I've had people come and say that, reading my story is what got them to leave an emotionally abusive or sometimes even physically abusive situation and save their life. And I also think that, I'm so about empowering other people to step into their purpose, to do their greatest work, and to really amplify their message. And I think for any of us, if we have people in our lives who are abusive to us, who are minimizing us, who are making us question ourselves, it's hard for us to show up as our most powerful self, and we need to get rid of those negative influences. And so being an example of someone who has done that. But the shame is just so deep. And I think that we release our shame when we realize that we are not alone. And I think it's very healthy and helpful to be talking about these experiences. So I'm just so glad to be sharing my story, to have the tools as someone who is a publicity expert to know how to get the message in front of more people.
Oh, I love that. And I feel like it even sums up my next question, which is, how do you, what does it mean to be brave? And I feel like you've just shared all of it. In that way.
Yeah, I mean, bravery is all about feeling the fear and doing it anyways. And I think that that's a huge part of being an entrepreneur, right? Where there's always things that are scary, from calling ourselves a business owner, having a website, putting our picture, big up on the website, like wondering, like, is that arrogant of me? Is it too much? Pricing our services. And then there's just like different levels of fear. But I think that, showing someone like a challenge like this is one of the most scary things. And also, because there's parts of like ourselves that like judge ourselves for being in that situation. But I think that, when you do the thing that's scary, over time, it's like scary things become second nature. And then you feel very powerful and empowered. Like nothing's going to hold me back. So, yeah.
I love that. I love that. All right. Final question. What word or words describe the season of life?
Okay, what word or words describe the season of life? So the words that are coming up for me right now are fruits. So this was my word of the year. So what I love about fruits is that they are simple, they are healthy, they are pure. You take a bite of fruit and it's nutritious. You don't have to pour sugar or syrup and put all these things on a fruit to make it good, right? And so when I think about my business, I'm thinking about, how can I simplify, right? I'm in the stage of simplification. Like I've built so much over the past 10 years, but how can I keep things simple? And also with the relationship that I'm looking for, in the past relationship, the abusive one, there was all this love bombing and all of these dramatic gestures and, all this stuff. And I don't need that. I need something that is like pure and simple and healthy. So that is like the theme for me in this stage of life right now, fruits.
Oh, I love that. Oh my goodness. I think that I've not heard a better metaphor. And of course, it has to come from Selena Soo. All right, you guys. Until next time on the Brave Table. See you next time at the Brave Table.